All right, thanks everyone for taking the time to join today. We're going to go over the 5.5.2 new release webinar and talk about some of the improvements that have been made to the new version of CurrentWare and also some of the ways that it can help your organization during this time. So myself, Neel Lukka, I'm the Managing Director of CurrentWare, along with Sai Kit Chu are going to be your webinar host for today. And then we'll take about 20 minutes to walk through the new features, and then we'll also take some time for Q&A at the end. From an agenda perspective, I'm going to start off with some of the new resources that we've launched in the last 3 months, talking through some of the benefits that we've provided from a content perspective, not just from a technology side. Then we'll talk about the release, show you a feature demo, and then show and allow for a Q&A time at the end. So first off, just wanted to cover, we've recently released a white paper talking about best practices for balancing productivity, security, and privacy. This is to really help the organizations that are using CurrentWare think about the best ways to monitor employees from a privacy perspective, while also understanding the invasiveness, but in transparency that may be important to your organizations at this time. Obviously, with so many members of your workforce maybe working from home or remotely, or maybe a blended type of arrangement where they're in the office some days and remote others, having this type of resource we've found to be very, very helpful for the organizations that we work with. And it's easily available at our website to look into. We'd love your feedback if you take a chance to read it and see how that it can benefit your organization. Secondly, we recently released an employee internet usage policy template. So this policy covers the most important elements that you need to inform your employees about with respect to your technology and acceptable use of the internet. A lot of organizations tend to implement these policies early on in the employment cycle to make sure that employees understand their responsibility with using technology and their responsibilities with respect to all the company provided devices. Software and products like CurrentWare from a BrowseReporter, Browse Control, and enPowerManager and AccessPatrol perspective can obviously help restrict and monitor these things, but it's also important to speak to your employees about this and have them sign a formal policy. So we've put together a great template that you can access on the website. And again, if you have feedback or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you on that. The third thing we've been doing is really updating our YouTube channel, including new videos about items that are related to obviously the software that we offer, but some other trends related to the technology, privacy, security, and productivity space. We've released a lot of new videos over the past 2 months. The team's been hard at work doing that. So do take a moment to check out the YouTube channel. We're always looking for new ideas for videos that can help you cover some of the items that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So again, feel free to provide feedback on other topics that you think could be helpful for us to cover. And we'll actually upload this webinar to the YouTube channel as well, so you can access it there as well. Finally, as we mentioned, I think on our last webinar, we've updated and improved our knowledge base on the website. So we're constantly upgrading the articles, the topics related to the software that helps you do a little bit of self-serve from a support and organizational perspective. So for example, with this screenshot, we've got the release notes of what's come out in version 5.5.2 and always adding things there. There's a nice search bar as well that'll allow you to find any issues that you may be having to assist with that. Our support team is obviously always available, but understand depending on the times that you're looking for things, or sometimes you'd like to do your things yourself. So we're really trying to keep that knowledge base up to date. So version 5.5.2 was released last week, and there's a lot of new features related to the current environment that we're in and improvements to some of our technology that we'll now cover. First off, with enPowerManager, we released 2 new reports in that product to help you understand the history of users and computer activity to investigate productivity, system, and performance issues. So we've got 2 new great reports related to user log-on and log-off history, and also computer startup and shutdown history. With these reports, we're really starting to improve enPowerManager and expect to do so over the coming months as well, to make it more transparent into what's happening on your network with the devices that are being managed with your CurrentWare solution. The enPowerManager product is included if you have the CurrentWare Suite package, but enPowerManager can also very easily be added on if you are using maybe one of the AccessPatrol, BrowseReporter, or Browse Control solutions. enPowerManager is also going to give you the ability to remotely start up or shut down your devices as needed. So Sai will cover these reports in more detail when he's in the technical demo, But again, this is some of the first improvements we're making to enPowerManager in the last few months, and look to make more going forward into 2021. Secondly, we made some BrowseReporter enhancements. The first one's related to location tracking by IP address. So with the blended workforce and employees being working remotely and at the office, the ability to know how they're performing or what they're doing in those different locations. So Sai will show you how to define the IP addresses for your organization and how to identify whether people are at work or remote. So if you need to investigate performance on a remote basis, when people aren't at the office, you can parse out reports that way. And you can also see a comparison of productivity based on remote work versus being at the office. We've also improved the readability of the bandwidth usage URL report, along with some other enhancements that I'll cover on some further slides. As I mentioned, here's an example of what employees are doing from an office or remote perspective and how they're being productive in office versus remote, and how much of their time has been spent working in the office versus remote. So again, as we go into the new era of a lot more remote work capabilities being required by organizations, we're going to continue to expand these feature sets to help you manage your workforce more effectively, given that such a significant portion may not be actually in the office every day. From an AccessPatrol perspective, 4 major enhancements that we made. Added the access code generator to user mode, so you can generate codes from a user perspective, and enhance the blocking file extensions to block file transfers. Also added portable devices to file tracking, and an option to block all except for Wi-Fi, which was a requested feature by a number of our users. So some enhancements here. We've obviously been improving AccessPatrol quite a bit with the demands for the DLP solution, and are continuing to do so. And again, Sai will show these when he goes to the product demo. From an other enhancements perspective, we really improved the console performance for over 500 computers, the organizations with larger deployments. So that speed improvement is something that we've got as feedback, where we were able to optimize load times on a number of parts of the platform. We've also reduced the overhead of website tracking on Google Chrome. There were some updates that Google Chrome made that may have slowed down the experience as it related to CurrentWare, and 5.5.2 does a good job at restoring that speed. Also made it easier to have an internet on and off function for browser controls URL filter window, and remove some excluded applications that were hard-coded into application tracking. The major ones here are definitely the Chrome speed and the console performance speed to help with any performance issues that you may have been having from a speed perspective. I'm going to pass it over to Sai now, who's going to actually show some of the improvements that were made, and we'll open it up for questions after that. Just give me a moment. I'll pass it over to Sai.
Excited to show you the new features in 5.5.2. A lot of you have requested the enPowerManager reports, and we've kind of delivered now the ability for you to audit your users' log on and log off reports, as well as startup and shutdown. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that very first feature. On the enPowerManager menu, there's going to be a new item here called Run Report, and we've added 2 reports here, and it's a very familiar interface here, similar to BrowseReporter and as well as AccessPatrol. So this new report, you're going to be able to see the different users that are logged into the computer at different times. So here we have a few users with the logon time. Let me just run that report in PC mode so you can see it based on computer as well as user. This report is actually compatible with both computer and user mode. So if you're looking to understand if a user has been logging on multiple computers, you can run the user report. Or in this case, in this particular report, you can see this one user have been logged on to their desktop on the following day. So the important part about this report is the duration that's calculated as well. So you no longer have to guess whether somebody at home is actually logging onto their computer and doing work. You can just go ahead and run this report, and you'll be able to see their uptime at home. The second report I want to show you with enPowerManager is the computer startup history. With this report, you get to see exactly when the computer was started, as well as when it goes into sleep mode or shutdown. So with the startup and shutdown, you now have the ability to understand if your user systems are online, as well as to see if there's any performance issues where they're shutting down their computer at an abnormal time. Okay. So those are two very important reports that we've included in enPowerManager. And if you have the CurrentWare suite, you will be able to run these reports, and they will start tracking immediately. Next, I'm going to show you the BrowseReporter new reports for location tracking. Now, we've incorporated this report into our existing reports. The first thing you need to do is actually go into Run Report. And you'll notice if you use Sites Visited, there is going to be a new option here that allows you to enable location tracking. Okay? With location tracking, we're essentially tracking IP address based on where your users are browsing their websites. So with this information, we match it against this list that you configured on your end to see if the IP address of their browsing activity matches the office IP. And based on that, that result, you'll be able to see how it looks like on the report. Okay, so let's look at the employee productivity report by location and get an understanding of the different users browsing in the office versus outside the office. Okay. So in this report, you can see for the accounting group, you've got multiple computers and their activities within the office and in a remote location outside the office. Now, the remote location is strictly based on the fact that the browsing does not match the IP address that's listed on your defined IP. So you do have to do that first if you want to use this feature. First, you enable it, define your IP, and then you run the report after the tracking has been done. So with this report, you get to see the productivity score in the office as well as remotely outside the office. And you can tell in the very last column how often they were working from inside the office. Now I'm going to show you two more reports that we've added the location tracking to. The second one is the top domain by browsing time. So with this, we added multiple columns to tell you whether the domain that your end users are browsing to, did they browse to those domains within the office or at a remote location. Okay, and lastly, the sites visited report, we've also added an extra column that tells you the activities, whether it's being done at the office IP address or at the remote IP address. By adding that extra column, you can tell whether those reports, whether those activities are being done inside the office or outside. So for this particular computer, Franklin was browsing remotely on these YouTube videos, but in the office, he was browsing in under Google Drive. Okay, so those are the new reports that we have added to BrowseReporter. Next, I want to show you guys some of the new features from AccessPatrol. Okay, so with AccessPatrol, the first thing I want to show you is that the access code generator that's normally available for PC mode is now also implemented for user mode. So you can go into a user and generate a code. And when this is going to be based on the user login. So it doesn't matter which device that they're logged into. As long as their Windows user account is logged in, they can use this code to unlock their USB or external devices for X number of hours. The second feature that we have here is the block file transfer. So for block file transfer, we no longer just support blocking the file extension. You can now extend beyond that and block the file names as well. So whether it's there's maybe an internal document that you want to block based on names, and you want to make sure that that file is not being transferred over to any USB or external hard drive, then you can add those files names in here. And perhaps it's a company code for a special document, and you can add all of that in here. Whereas previously in the older version, it was just blocking the extensions. And then lastly, we have the feature of file tracking for portable devices. So under device report, tracking option, there will now be a new portable device tracking where you can track when somebody copies a file to a phone that's plugged into their computer or a tablet. Okay, perfect. So that's the last feature I want to show you guys for 5.5.2. I'm going to pass it back to Neel, and he's going to wrap up the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Sai. So last thing, just wanted to offer the chance for anyone to ask any questions. Just going to enable the chat. So if you do have any questions for us about the new products or anything that we can assist with respect to CurrentWare, happy to do so. From the emails that we got in before, there was a question about the remote tracking. So they wanted to understand a little bit more, Sai, if you could give them information on what the easiest way to find those IP addresses are and how to define the ranges of IPs or the IP addresses that they should include.
Okay, perfect. So the IP address, you do have to find out your office IP address first. So we're talking about the public IP address because that's what the CurrentWare client will use to determine whether that activity is from internal versus external. And you can definitely put in a range. You just have to leave out the last part of the IP address to put in a range.
Perfect. And then there was another question that Sai, you could also answer. I think it was related to understanding a little bit more about the idle time that was released previously. So if you could give us a little bit more information and just explain again how the idle time side of things work, because I think this person was specifically asking about understanding when their employees were actually working when they were remote.
Okay, perfect. So the idle time is related to mouse and keyboard movements. So this was introduced in the last version and not this version, but it is an enhancement to our report. So essentially, when you have it enable in your report, it's more of a filter. It doesn't affect the way it tracks. We do track the idle time regardless in the back end. But when you enable it, that's when it filters out the report to give you a more accurate data of when your user was actually actively using the mouse and keyboard while they're browsing.
Yep, great. Just had a question from Victor. Wanted you to explain the access code generator again for AccessPatrol. He just didn't understand some of the items. Can you explain it again?
For sure. So the access code generator is great for system admin to give their end user temporary access to their USB devices. So on the CurrentWare console, you just have to find the computer or the user and open up the access code generator, hit generate, and it gives you a 12 letter number character code that you can then give to your end user either by email, chat, or over the phone. And they go into their control panel, type it in, and that will unlock AccessPatrol from blocking the USB device and allow them for a temporary access. And that code is one-time use.
Perfect. And I think Stefan Bourgeois had a question about how we collect events with an agent. So yes, CurrentWare is based on having an agent installed on the machines. Those agents can be deployed remotely, and they can also be deployed in stealth mode. So the agent is going to feed back the information, whether it's for browser monitoring, application monitoring, blocking certain websites, understanding when the computers were started or turned off, etc. So the agent is the item that is communicating back to the server to give the information that's occurring on the devices. Okay, great. So appreciate everyone joining. The only other thing I wanted to add is the version 5.5.2 is available on the website now. If you had questions about any of the new features that are released, feel free to reach out to our team. The enPowerManager solution, again, has been upgraded. So if you have CurrentWare Suite or licenses for enPowerManager, you do get access to that. If you did want to look at getting a quote or a pricing on enPowerManager, and if you have some of our other products, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So feel free to reach out to our team. We're glad to assist as we can, and always looking for other ways that the software can be improved as well. Again, apologies for the technical issues that occurred earlier, but really appreciate everyone taking the time, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you.